What's up, guys? I'm Lego Lord, and this is my workshop. Hello, guys. So this is my Mimban mock from Solo: A Star Wars Story. If you guys haven't already seen the cinematic version of this, I would encourage you to pause the video and go see that. That way you guys can kind of get a good overview of this before we start really going through it. So if you guys did see the cinematic, you've already got like a sneak peek at this mock so far. This mock actually was probably one of the quickest mocks I've ever built. I was able to wrap this out in a couple days. First day I just built the base and kind of the foundation of it, and the second night I actually was up really late. I was up till midnight working on this because I really wanted to be able to get it out to you guys as soon as possible. And I just had like the creative juices flowing and stuff, so it was going along really nicely. So this is my mock. I placed only about one bricklink order. That was mostly to get some of the vegetation parts, because if you guys know, there's not many, how do I say this? There's not much variation in vegetation parts that you can use for brown and dark tan in this sort of landscape. So I didn't even know they made these brown pieces right here, these stem pieces, until I went on Bricklink one day and I saw it. And I'm like, I gotta pick some of those up. And then they also had some of these dark orange stem pieces. I only had one in my collection, so I was really happy to pick up about 30 of those. Didn't end up using that many, obviously, but that might work good for a Geonosis mock in the future. So that was pretty much the bulk of the order, and then the other stuff was for my other mock, but that was pretty much it as far as that went. And then I have one of these bushes back here. Really fun technique I was able to include, because if you guys know any of my mocks, I like to include minifigure parts where they're not supposed to be. So I had this bush, and I'm like, I don't want to just stick the bush right here, because that's kind of boring. So I'm like, how can I spice this up? I'm like, what if I stuck minifigure hands in it? And that actually came out to give it a really nice aesthetic. So that's what we went with for that kind of main piece right there. And then I did have some pieces from a Naxos left over. You can see kind of the cattle horn right there, the brown cattle horn. There's some others scattered around, but that kind of was most of it for the vegetation. Another thing I really tried to do with this was do a lot of angles. So like if you're looking in here, guys, like you see right here along that crest, it's angled. Look back there, that's angled. I try to fit in some weird angles in here because I really wanted it to kind of stand out and for you to see the weird shapes. Then if we go along the trench, obviously the angled portion in front, but I tried to do the whole thing snot, so it's snot all the way through on the base of it. That enabled me to do a few really fun things. Coolest part for me was, actually I ended up making the minifigures before the mock. I wanted to kind of get the inspiration flowing and be like, so I'm making this mock, I'm going to make the minifigures first, so then I can kind of make a mock to put them in. That sort of vibe. So, I was actually really lucky with these minifigures. I actually had these Solo figures from a couple years ago from Christmas when my parents got me the Solo TIE Fighter. And it came with a Mimban trooper, an officer, and then just a regular soldier. So that was really nice, because if you guys know, those figures are crazy expensive. Like the Mimban troopers, like the Stormtrooper you can see all the way in the back, those are going for $40 a piece. Considering the original set was $80, that's insane. Really fun thing though for me on this was to be able to do the crazy minifigures. So the first thing, obviously, if you can see the dead soldier lying on the ground, was his arm. If any of you guys know, I do want to give credit to where I got this inspiration from, would be Luca from First Order Lego. You guys go and see some of his mocks. He's used this kind of technique before. It's really crazy. He did this one where it was like a zombie infiltration on a Star Destroyer, and he had a lot of things like that. He also had a Geonosis mock that used that technique. I've seen it elsewhere as well, but it's a really cool technique, as you guys can get a good look at it right there. Another thing I added to it that I was pretty happy with was part of the snot floor I ended up making red. That way it kind of made the whole thing fit together really nicely, in addition to the pieces I added on top. Another cool thing with that figure is I was able to make like a bandolier kind of thing with a knife and a magazine in front, and then cool technique, that rubber band actually holds up the lever you can see that's part of his backpack. Moving on to the officer, this was really fun to do. It's pretty basic for the most part. Detached his foot and raised it as a stud on the terrain. Makes it look like he's standing up. Then it just has a custom blaster. But then the cool part was I actually made this out of paper, his cape. I cut it to size and stuff. And it actually looks way better than I could have expected. So very, very happy with that minifigure. Moving on, down here we have a Mimban trooper who has drowned in the mud. So he's just got his arms sticking out. You can see some of the water there in the mud. That was kind of the idea for that. I couldn't include the whole figure, but I didn't want to like overcrowd the mock. I thought that was a good way of using him. Then, I don't know if you guys can see, but I have some pretty cool custom blasters. This is the first time I've been able to use them. I picked them up at Brick Fair. Those were actually $2.50 a piece, so pretty expensive as far as custom blasters go. But as you can see on this figure right here, that magazine is actually what goes in there. It has two separate molds. The one is the magazine for it, so the magazine pops in and out, so you can have some pretty cool shots with that. Moving on to the actual terrain, I wanted to use brown and dark tan. I was thinking of nougat, but looking back, I wasn't sure if it would make the mock a little too light, so I decided just to stick with these two colors. And I wanted to do kind of like splotches of each, so as you guys can see, there's almost like veins running through it of each color. That was kind of the idea for this. And then I wanted it to look very chaotic. I didn't want it to look nice and organized, so I kind of just tried to make it a bunch of weird angles, as I said before, just weirdly placed. That was the whole goal of this. Originally, there wasn't even going to be a trench in it, but the way it ended up being built, I'm like, why not? There's this perfect spot right here that I haven't built up over yet. And I was kind of struggling to find the right rock pieces to fit in there. So I'm like, it'd be so much cooler if we added a trench. So that is where that was born. I'm super happy with the way that turned out. As you guys can see along that back wall, I just used some plates and then just hinged them on differently, the tiles on top of it. And then obviously just had the tiles on the corners, which I thought gave it a really nice aesthetic with more tiles running along the top to kind of cap it off. Cool thing I used when connecting those side pieces is I actually used the feather pieces that go in like knights' hats and stuff like that. And then I was able to actually attach that, because if you look on the underside of tiles, they actually have a very small, you almost can't even tell, but they have a little circle, inner circle underneath that you can actually connect that feather through. So when connecting that feather through, it actually sticks through and gives it enough friction for it to stand straight up. So that was a really crazy technique. I was pretty happy with the way that turned out. Then moving up to the top, I wanted something to be a little bit more vertical and not just flat off, so I added this kind of rock piece up there. Pretty happy with how it turned out. Pretty basic, but I was happy with it. And then for the terrain, I just used a mixture of tiles, plates, curved slopes, that kind of thing. And for the base itself, it's just obviously some bricks, and then there's snot bricks underneath the actual base of the mock in order to give it the connection points. And if you guys are ever building something like this, it's a really cool aesthetic if you just add like some small rock piece jutting out at the corners and stuff. It also helps fill it up if you have an open space like that. So that pretty much covers everything in this mock. So please let me know your thoughts down below. I really appreciate it. And let's head to the outro. I hope you guys did enjoy my Mimban mock. That took me actually relatively short, but I'm really happy I was able to get that out to you guys, because I'm glad to be working on another mock, and I wanted to show you guys that I'm really back and not just whatever. So, another mock coming soon. Place some Bricklink orders. About halfway done right now. That should be coming out 1-2 weeks, somewhere in that timeline. And then do be on the lookout for the beginning of my next mock build series. So if you guys have any questions or suggestions, you can put those in the comments below. And as always, guys, I am Lego Lord, and this is my workshop.